Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the #1 international best-selling book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. Our guest today is Ellie Pechet, who is a shaman, medium, and metaphysician with over 33 years of experience in the counseling and energy healing field. Ellie has earned a master's degree in counseling from Cambridge College and has trained in many healing modalities. She is the creator of the Pichette Healing technique, which is a procedure that clears core issues at the cellular level through energy manipulation. She is also the author of the book called Hitching a Ride, A Guide to Earthbound Spirits and How They Affect You. Her website is phoenixrisinghealing.com. Ellie has helped thousands of individuals, both in person and long distance over the years, using the combination of intuitive counseling and advanced energy work. Ellie Pechet, a warm welcome to We Don't Die Radio. Hello.
Hey, thank you, Sam.
You're welcome.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you here.
Wonderful to connect with you.
It is. And
Thank you.
We will both be speakers at the upcoming Afterlife Symposium, so I know I can give you a big hug in person when we meet.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. So, Ellie, if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about you, maybe where you're living right now, and a little bit about your background and how you, and the title of the show is We Don't Die, so we love hearing stories in your past of why you believe in the afterlife.
Sure. Well, I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I currently live in Black Mountain, North Carolina, and I am going to be moving back to Boston because I feel that that's where my work and my abilities are needed. Right now, I'm still mainly focusing with clients one-on-one, but I feel that my calling is to be working with larger and larger groups so that I can impact more people
That's great.
while I'm here. Yeah.
And how did you get into this? In fact, just a little bit about your background.
Sure. I started out being very interested in people, and I find what makes people tick pretty fascinating, and that was over 33 years ago. I started out doing counseling on a psychiatric unit, and then from there I continued in the mainstream counseling field for a number of years. And at the same time, I was getting trained in energy medicine techniques, which it was really an intuitive knowing that was what I'm here to do, is the intuitive energy healing. And having the counseling background is very, I think it makes me a very well-rounded practitioner, and it helps me to, I'm familiar with different diagnoses and symptoms connected to those diagnoses, and then I'm able to use that information and intuit what the root causes are of the symptom that the client is presenting when I work with them.
Yeah.
And then I clear it. I intuit the root cause of, say, the depression, and then I am able to dissolve it. And that's what the Pichette Healing technique is.
Could you give us a little bit about your background, as far as I know you are a shaman and a medium. Were those things that you trained for, and how does one go about that?
I did not train to be a shaman. I came in as a shaman.
Okay.
I got in touch with some past life memories when I was a shaman, and I found myself being able to just remember how to do certain things from those lifetimes, like removing a a spirit of someone who had died, removing them from the person that they were with. And I didn't do any reading about that. I didn't plan on incorporating that into my work with clients, but like I say, it was something that I just found myself remembering how to do and then doing it and being effective.
Can you speak a little bit about that? It's a subject that we don't talk about here, or we haven't. And, there's all kinds of people who have different beliefs. And I always say to our listener, take what resonates for you. But maybe this will be a good time, because we're eventually going to get talking about your book also. But before we get into a little bit more on the healing side, just what you mean by when somebody attaches themselves on.
Yeah. Well, sometimes people will die, and they might not remember how to go back to the light, or I like to call it home. And so they say someone dies in a hospital, and they panic, and then they might stay in the hospital, but they don't have a body anymore. And so they might be attracted to a certain person. Maybe that person reminds them of their child or someone that they were fond of, and they'll just sort of hang out with them. And then eventually they might, because their energy, they can pretty much go where they want to. So they can hang around with a person, or they can go inside of that person eventually. And that branch of my work is the shaman branch, where I can identify if a soul has gotten stuck here, and I can help guide them to the light.
And I'm just thinking, in our listeners right now, a lot of times we go to mediums and things, and I have a little bit different background and belief system, but I'm always open to listening. But if there was someone who asked the question, well, how do I know if my loved one has gone through the light or not? How would you address that?
Oh, I can find out within about a minute. Pretty quickly. I just link up, which is this, like saying tune in, and but it's tuning in at a higher vibration, and I can find out if that person is still here or if they have gone to the light. Yeah, that's pretty quick.
Okay. And is that a fear that people should have, whether their loved ones moved on, or can we say most people go to the light?
I don't think it should be a fear. I think maybe concern might be a little bit, a nice way to put it. And that's where I do help. If their loved one has gotten stuck here, and I can identify that, and I can move them on to the light. Now, that I really enjoy doing. I mean, it's a huge service, because when a soul gets stuck here, it stops their progression and their growth as a soul. So it's very important to help them get to the light so that they can go through their life review and prepare for whatever their next step is, whether it's reincarnating as another person to go through a certain set of experiences that they'll agree to, or they might be graduating to another level, like becoming a spirit guide, for example. But that happens later. That's a pretty high level of development. Usually there are a lot of, every time that that we incarnate here on the earth plane, my understanding is that, there's a new set of lessons that our soul wants to learn and experience. And that's how we grow. And so we accumulate these experiences, and we keep progressing.
I
So
agree.
that's why it's, yeah. So that's why it's, I mean, that's very important that when people die, that they do successfully go to the light, to not hamper that progress.
Is there a prayer or an intention that something like we could all do for our loved one? Just, I can understand, and I've heard this before, if people have unfinished business or something like that, they might hang around. But as a whole, and maybe you even cover this in your book, Hitching a Ride, is there a practice that
Yeah.
we can do? Because not everybody's going to be able to contact you, I don't think, on planet Earth to find out. But is there something that we can do ourselves just to talk to our loved ones? And either way, just to assure that they're moving forward on their spiritual journey.
Well, you can't really assure that they're moving forward on their spiritual journey without knowing for sure if they have moved on to the light. However, and that's what someone like myself or someone else who is trained in this can help with. However, what everyone can do when they lose someone is that, first they do need to go, through their own grief. And one of the things that keeps spirits here on the earth plane is if the person who has lost that loved one can't seem to get over it or move on, it can keep them. It's like holding on to them is one of the ways that they can get stuck here. So I would say, to put it in a proactive way, the more that people can come to a place of peace about their loved one dying, and wish them well and see them going to the light, the more that helps the person who has died. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Definitely. Yeah. I think
Good.
and one of the reasons I have this show too is not only to talk about the afterlife, but it's to talk about us being souls having a human experience, and we want to have as much experiences as we can here and have as much forgiveness and self-love, and there's lessons kind of to learn, I feel. And if we do have a belief that we go on, there's not going to be any fear of going towards the light, so to speak. And that's my belief, is giving the education and the knowledge now.
I agree with you, Sandra. I think that's really important. I think you're touching on something really, really significant, and that is the more that we talk about dying and death and transition, the less fear we have going into that, and the more likely we are to transition successfully.
Yes. Yes. You work as a medium as well, don't you, as one of the services that you offer?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any
Um,
favorite stories of, and you don't obviously have to use names or too specifics, of maybe a service that you gave that reconnected someone with their loved one and gave them that confirmation? Because I
yeah.
do believe
Oh,
a good medium reading can definitely help people who have a loved one that is no longer in the flesh.
I agree with you. And, what I love about it is that I love helping people get closure. And for me, closure is the same thing as coming to peace. I think one of my favorite stories is a young woman came to see me, and her brother had died about 4 or 5 years earlier. She was 16 or 17 when she came to see me, maybe 17. And she and her brother had been very close. And one day they were swimming the two of them plus a few of his friends, and they were swimming, and he got a cramp in his leg, and he ended up drowning. And they didn't know that it was from a cramp in the leg until he told me that during the session. So anyway, all the family knew was that they had been swimming and he drowned, and no one would talk about it. The family, was under a lot of stress and grieving, and no one was talking about it, which makes that whole process worse.
Yes, definitely.
So she finally got to the point where she was ready to hear, wanted to know what did happen that day. Why did he drown? And so I was sitting with her in the office, and he made an appearance almost immediately. And I could see what he was wearing. I described it to her. I said, he's wearing a white T-shirt and jeans. He's attractive. And I mean, he's just really, good personality, very kind of clean cut. And from the description, she recognized him, that it was her brother. And he said, "Are you ready to hear what happened?" And she said, "Yes." And, speaking through me, I'm the one who asked her if she was ready, because he said that to me. That's what a medium is. It's the communication or the communicator between the person who lost someone and the person who was on the other side.
Yes, right.
And that's when he explained to me what happened, which was that he had gotten a cramp in his leg, and the other boys didn't know what to do, and he sent them ahead. He said, "Well, go get help. I'll be okay." But he wasn't okay. They went and got help, but he got too tired and couldn't swim at that point, and that's how he drowned. So I explained this to his sister, who was sitting there in the office with me, and that was the first step for her getting closure, is knowing, what happened, what was the circumstance. And then we moved on to how he's been doing. How is he doing now? He did go to the light, and he wanted his family to heal. He wanted his brothers to heal, and they had kind of been going down the wrong track, starting to experiment with drugs, which is the problem when people have a lot of grief. They can become destructive and unhealthy, and that's why communicating and healing are so important when a loved one dies. So he said that he was doing really well, and that he was with his sister a lot. And he also told me that, if she would just sort of listen for him, he would meet with her in her room at the house. She was still living at home. And if she would have a journal and a pen, he would talk with her, and she could write down what he said, and they could communicate together. So she was really happy about that, and felt like the door was open. It was just really helpful for her to finally move into a good place about her brother dying.
Grief is so hard, as we all know. And I love that advice about journaling and writing. It's so easy. I don't know if you're like me or not, but I know my dad passed 8 years ago, and I've had plenty of mediums that have given me great assurance that he's around and said some very specific things. But one of the messages that keeps coming through is, "You can still talk to me." Well, it's very hard to talk to somebody that's, not visible. And I just had this thought lately. If I were to write in a journal and write my thoughts out to that person, it would be much clearer communication than, sometimes I start and think, "Okay, Dad, I know you're with me. and then all of a sudden I'm like, "Ooh, did I turn the coffee maker off? What about this I have to do tomorrow?" So it's not having that person in front of me, it's hard to hold that intent. Whereas I think writing is a really good recommendation to get those thoughts out. And then, I don't think when we get to the spirit world that we are the be all end all, have all the answers, but I do think they can start working from their point of view to communicate with us.
I agree with you. And, it can be hard to quiet the mind. We all have pretty busy lives, and there's a lot of distractions, a lot of potentials for distraction. So I think you're right. I think the first step is to say, hey, I'm not going to let myself get distracted. I'm going to take this half hour or this hour for me to connect with my feelings, and then hopefully with the person who I am missing. And, journaling can be a good way to focus, kind of the next step in getting yourself to focus on being in the moment and do some writing. And then it's easier to move into a higher level yourself, where you're going to be more likely to hear and receive communication from the person who died. You have to have a quiet mind for that, but it is something that you can do. And another good thing to do is write down what you start hearing, because you'll hear it's like another person talking to you. And it very well could be the person that you're missing, because they know that you're missing them and they want to reassure you that they're okay. And they might have more information for you as well.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And you never know when it's going to come in. It could come in a dream. It could be something, a song that comes on the radio. But I think once we start getting in motion for getting our thoughts out and onto paper, I mean, if you choose that way, that really helps. Ellie, I want to talk to you about the Pichette Healing technique. And I know that there is there's a ton of different emotional things that happen with us human beings, and healing that we'd love all people to have. But I know in the category that we're talking about now, there is depression and grief and guilt, very often a lot of things that have been left unsaid. And if you could just share a little bit about what the Pichette Healing technique is, and a little, because I'm guessing it is a form of energy healing. Am I correct?
Well, yeah, it's definitely energy healing. It's a technique that I've been developing over 33 years. Let's see. Whatever the issue is for the client that is sitting with me, and this could be on the phone or on Skype, which is how I work with most people. And I have clients all over the world, and my technique is as effective as if they were sitting in person with me, or if they were in Costa Rica or Australia. Doesn't matter where they are. It's about being able to connect with that client. And say someone, would you like me to give you an example?
Oh, love examples. Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So I had a guy who, on Cape Cod, who had Meniere's disease and vertigo. And he had those for about 16 years. And what happened was, the way that it started, and I sort of play psychic investigator. I like to get to the bottom of things. That's what I'm really good at. Is what was the precipitating cause of the symptoms that the person has now. So for him, he had an actual physical trauma. It was Christmas Day, and he was fixing something. He owns a bunch of some cottages on Cape Cod, And he got up really, really quickly. He was kneeling down, fixing something. He forgot that there was a shelf above his head, and he traumatized his brain by getting up so quickly and running into the shelf that was sticking out. Well, that damage set off the Meniere's disease and the vertigo, and he would have to stop what he was doing. He would have waves of dizziness that would just come over him, and he would have to stop and lie down until those waves passed. Anyway, plus the migraines. And as time went on, he's probably in his 50s, maybe 60, and getting closer to wanting to retire and enjoy the rest of his life with his wife. It's a lot of work running cottages in the summer on Cape Cod, as I'm sure a lot of people know. So as time went on, and he's trying this person and that person, and even flying, to a doctor, a chiropractor who specializes in Meniere's disease, with no improvement. So as time went on, he was becoming more and more depressed, and he felt hopeless, that he was never going to be able to get past this. So then he found me and signed up for 4 sessions. It was 4 to 8 sessions. And the first thing that I intuited that needed to be healed was hopeless. He felt hopeless. And I needed him to be on board with the work that I was doing with him. And so by clearing hopeless and then imprinting him with being hopeful, he improved. The symptoms didn't improve yet, but his whole outlook about his future improved, and he was open to the healing work that I did with him. So I was able to, in the next few sessions, I cleared the trauma, the original trauma of the injury when he hit his head on that shelf. That was the second session. And then after that, I started focusing on the physical symptoms, the brain itself. And I was able to heal the symptoms of the Meniere's disease and the vertigo. And he was very happy. And now, he went from being hopeless to being hopeful about his future. And he didn't have these attacks of dizziness and needing to stop what he was doing. That was all cleared up. So that's one example of a client who came to me with physical issues, but there were also emotional issues that I healed. And physical issues always have emotional core elements, which is what I deal with first.
Yeah, that makes sense. And have you worked with people who are grieving the loss of a loved one?
Yeah, that's a pretty big part of my work is like Paige. I think I sent you her video testimonial. In fact, I met her at the Afterlife conference 2 years ago. Her son had died 7 years earlier. He was murdered, and he was in his first year of college, and he had his whole future in front of him, and he was her only child. So when he was murdered, you can imagine how devastating that was for her. So I was able to heal her grief, and she had tried a lot of different, techniques, other practitioners, and it would help for a little bit, and then the grief would come back up full force. And after I worked with her, she was completely at peace about losing her son. And in the video testimonial that's on the website, she even says, I can look at his picture now and I don't feel bad. I feel like he's okay, that he's in a good place and I can move on. And she was able to pick herself back up and re-engage with her husband and work, and started to travel and live, live a normal life. And that's always my goal when I work with parents who are grieving, or, they don't have to be parents. It could be just someone who lost someone that was really important to them. My goal is always to bring them to peace about it, so that they can move on and not stay stuck. It's really important.
Yes, I know from personal experience, and many people I talk to, a lot of times when a loved one physically dies, the one who's left alive, like a part of them dies as well. And I've seen people trapped in grief for 30 or 40 years. And I am a real strong believer and advocate for helping people in any different tools that are out there to help them through grief. And I can't help but think, from what I've learned about the grieving process, while there are emotional components to it, there is actually also physical things happening in our body with the neurotransmitters and things happening in our brain and all that. So it sounds to me that you are impacting people through both the emotional and the physical side with grief. So that's great.
Oh, thanks, Sandra. Well, you remind me of another example that the listeners might enjoy hearing, and that is, I met another healer who was pretty well known, apparently, and he was on an oxygen tank, and he was really declining, and he wasn't that old. I mean, he was about, maybe 60s. And anyway, I was brought in to work with him, and I talked with him a little bit, and I got to the crux of the issue pretty quickly. He had a heartbreak, and people literally do die of broken hearts if the issue is not dealt with.
I believe that,
and
yes.
That's probably one of my favorite things to help people with, is a broken heart, so it doesn't have to turn into a heart condition, or something else physical, as you mentioned. Anyway, the crux of his heartbreak was that the love of his life was kidnapped, and so she was completely in his life one day, and the next she was gone. And that had happened about 30 years earlier, but he had never gotten over it. So that was what I intuited to focus on that day, was the broken heart of losing the love of his life. And the session went very well. And a few hours later, when I called him, he was not only at peace about losing her finally after all this time, he had put away the oxygen tank. He didn't need it anymore, and he was getting back on his feet. I mean, it was huge.
Wow. Unresolved emotions, I know, can add up to physical symptoms and problems. There was a man that I had spoken with that had read my book, just kind of as a favor, when I was first writing it. And he didn't realize that he had unresolved grief from the breakup of his first marriage. Mm-hmm. And, grief can be not just from a loved one's passing, but sometimes when you lose a job, you lose a relationship, you get diagnosed with an illness. I was talking to a woman yesterday on the bus from the airport, and her child, she only has one child, is going off to college. And the feeling that she's now experiencing is just, that can all be grief. But with this one
Yeah.
man, by identifying that one thing and giving some tools to help move through it, it's like other areas of your life start working as well. It's amazing how tight sometimes those emotional attachments and things can be. Ellie, go ahead.
Yeah.
What are you
And
going to say?
he didn't even, I was just going to say, he was in it so deep and so thick that he couldn't identify
Right.
that was the issue. That I came up with that, and then I told him, this is what I'm getting, that you have a broken heart here, and I can heal that for you. And he let me, and I did it, and then it was like he was back in the seat of life.
Yeah.
But when people get so immersed in their grief or whatever the pain is, whatever the cause is, they can't see clearly enough. And that's where I can help them, is because I'm objective and intuitive, I can go in and nail it to put it kind of, directly. I can nail what the core issue is, and they will feel the relief within that session, every session, whatever the issue is. So maybe the grief would start at a 10, right? For someone who has lost someone that they loved, and they're kind of still dealing with that, and they're kind of stuck in that place of grief. It will start at a 10 out of 10, but they will feel it literally start to come down the scale, and end up, by the time we finish the session, they'll be down at a 1 typically, and it doesn't return. I mean, I literally dissolve, whether it's grief or depression or hopelessness. I literally dissolve it like an eraser on a old-fashioned chalkboard full of writing. So they don't have to keep doing at it. They don't have to keep working at it. They don't have to do any work around it. And that's what sets me apart from other healers, is I take care of it, and they can move on to stronger, healthier, more at peace. Make sense?
It does. When you have a session with somebody, I know you've got your master's degree in counseling and you've worked 33 years, and a lot of this comes intuitively. But when you're with somebody, whether it's on the phone or in person, am I correct to say there's plenty of time that you're talking with them, but do you actually, or how do I say this? Is there a point where you go quiet and you apply any kind of energy healing, or is it all done while you're speaking?
That's a great question, Sandra. You're right on. Yes, the first 20 minutes is about talking, what is most up for the client. And while we're talking, I'm honing in on, what the issue is that is presenting itself that most needs to be cleared. So after about 20 to 25 minutes, I shift gears. I do go quiet, and I link up, and I get the exact wording. And that's really important, because one word can throw the whole thing off and it won't be effective. And it's very important to me that I get that I'm effective and get the results for the client I'm working with. So then I'll say, hey, this is what I'm getting. I'm getting, that you feel hopeless. Does that resonate? And they'll say yes. And then I'll ask them for a number, and it's usually a 9 or a 10 out of 10. And then, we're in sync together, and I start dissolving the issue. And I'm able to actually access the neural pathways in the brain. And that's a big part of my success with clients. Being able to clear a core issue every session is by being able to work with the neural pathways and dissolve the issue there. That's really really key to my technique. And then I do the imprint. So if they were hopeless, just as an example, when they first started with me, the imprint might be hopeful, and I'll have them affirm this as I'm imprinting it energetically. So it's reinforced. And by the end, they feel very relaxed, like deeply, deeply relaxed. And they feel at peace about whatever the issue is that I healed for them that session.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I just spent this last week at the Arthur Findlay College, and they teach mediumship and all kinds of things. And so much was spoken of about healing. And I've not really investigated the world of healing. I'm open to it, but the stories that I've heard about healings are incredible. I mean, it's like there is this energetic power, and I believe with loving intent, we really can move mountains. I wanted to ask you too, you have a YouTube channel and you have plenty of videos on that as well. Is that something we can just type in your name into YouTube and find them?
Yeah. Just type in Ellie Pechet, ELLIEPECHET, and I've got about 55 or 56 video testimonials on there from clients that I've helped with all kinds of emotional and physical issues.
Yeah, I will, for our listener, if you're listening to this on YouTube, just in the description of the episode, I'll have a live link to Ellie's YouTube channel. It's interesting to me. I remember hearing about, can't think of his name, the first guy that ran the 4-minute mile. Before that, no one could run that fast. But once he did it, more people were able to do it. And I think in so many realms of spirituality, I know I have a very skeptical mind about a lot. And I think that's a good thing. But when you hear enough stories with a similar outcome, it opens up our minds to believe, hey, there's something to this. And when we have a belief in something, there's also a bigger chance that things will work, if that makes sense. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Oh, it does, Sandra. Yeah, the more people are receptive and open to the possibilities without having to understand how it works, because you can't really understand specifically how energy works or how I do, what I do. But what's important is if they're open, they're going to get results. And the more skeptical a person is, the more closed they are. The more open they are, the more they're going to receive.
That's right. And Henry Ford's
Makes
got
sense?
this great quote. Yes, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So
Yeah, I love that.
I know.
It's a good quote.
Yeah, it is. For myself, I've been on this journey on, really investigating things. And I believe for any one of us, like what's exciting and interesting and passionate for some might not be for another. So you have to always put your interests. If this sounds like an interesting thing, yeah, maybe it's meant for you to explore more. And for me, like for instance, mediumship is something that I've always had an interest in, and I've dabbled on
Yeah.
enough courses to know that it kind of lies dormant within me. And just a couple of days ago, I ended up giving somebody a medium reading that was right on. I gave somebody else another one that was totally off. But, that could be plenty of reasons. But first of all, had I not had that first experience way back when I started investigating, is there any reality of the afterlife? Had I not had that experience, I wouldn't be open to explore more of what's possible. So it just opens the doorway. And so I think energy, healing in the Pichette healing technique. I mean, this sounds really, really like something to investigate. I want to bring up too, I talk about on every episode the Afterlife Symposium, because you and I have our friends with the AREI, the Afterlife Research and Education Institute, and we're doing our yearly symposium in Scottsdale, Arizona on September 13th through 16th, 2018. You can find out more at afterlifesymposium.org. But you are going to be offering a Sunday workshop after the symposium ends, right there at the symposium headquarters, in one of the conference rooms. And if it's all right, I'd like to talk about that a little bit, because it might be something, that you, our listener, might be something that you'd like to attend. Would you like to talk about what that's going to be? It's from 2 to 4:30 on the Sunday, and what people can,
Sure.
expect to find in that workshop, or get a taste of it anyways.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be talking about the technique that I do, about a little bit about energy medicine, and I'm going to be showing people, how they can balance their own polarity. And this is really good for, dealing with stress or anxiety or overwhelm, which happens to everyone at different times. And I'll be showing people how to ground themselves. And these things are pretty quick, but they're tools that the participants can take away with them that are very easy to use and very quick to use. And then we'll be moving on to working with probably 1, 2, depending on how much time we have, possibly 3 individuals in front of the group who have a core issue that I will intuit, from talking with them a little bit in front of the group. And it could be someone who lost, a child, and is really, in fact, that's what I did last time I gave the workshop at the symposium. A woman had lost her son 5 years prior, and she was really shut down and couldn't move past that grief. And in front of the group, I was able to dissolve the grief and bring her to peace about it. And everyone witnessed, her whole face, her whole demeanor changed, and her face lit up. And it was like that stuck, heavy grief was gone. It literally, people watched me do this right in front of them. And a lot of people signed up to work with me after what they witnessed. Because when you hear about it, it's one thing, but when you see it and you can feel it, it makes it that much more real.
Right.
So I'll be working with, at least, 1 or 2 people individually on, and clearing whatever their most pressing issue is. And then I'm also going to be working, not working, I'll intuit an issue that is prominent for the majority of the group, and then I'll be doing a group healing session. So everyone will, they're going to get a lot out of the workshop, and it's pretty dynamic. I think a lot of people, I think you should come. I think the listeners should try to come. It's going to be a really good conference. And so that's what I'll be focusing on in the workshop, is healing 1 or 2 people of something very specific, and then working, and then doing a group healing for everybody. So everyone is going to receive something as well as the tools to balance their own polarity and ground themselves when
That's
they need to.
fantastic. Yeah, and on the description, and for the listener, if you go to afterlifesymposium.org, you can click on a blue place that says workshops, and you'll see on Sunday, September 16th, 2 to 4:30, there's a description from Ellie. And a couple of things you mentioned by participating, that you'll have a reduction in stress and tension, increase in relaxation and inner peace, balance and alignment of polarity, which is your energy system, increase of your vital life force, and a profound positive energetic shift during this and after the workshop. So that's all sounds very good. Yeah, I know there's a lot to see and do and meet and experience while we're at the symposium, and I feel honored that I get to interview most of the speakers, because not everybody can attend the symposium, which I understand, but it's also nice to be able to hear what's going on in the world and who's offering what. So Ellie, thank you for all you're doing. And is there any, we're going to close out the show in just a few minutes. Is there anything that you can share with us that might be a tool that can help us alleviate something in our life, or is there any just like a short few words of advice that you could leave us with as maybe like a little gift? And I'm sure there will be listeners that will be interested in going to your website, which is phoenixrisinghealing.com, to find out more or to visit while we're in Scottsdale. But is there anything that you could offer for maybe somebody who won't have that opportunity?
Sure. Yeah, I was thinking that for the listeners, I'd like to offer, if they would like to work with me, I'd like to offer 4 sessions. If they sign up for 4 sessions, I'd like to give them a 5th session for free, bonus session. So, and I'll do that for 24 hours from, when the show goes out, and listeners can call me and set that up if they want to, or go to the website and learn more. So sign up for 4 clearing sessions, receive a 5th one free, and that can be given as a gift to another person.
Can I ask a favor on that, Ellie? Because some
Sure.
people won't even know of this till maybe a week from today. So they would not have had that opportunity. Would you offer that if people just wrote to you and said, I'm a listener of We Don't Die Radio?
Okay.
Because honest to God, their way people get their podcasts and all that, it doesn't always happen on the day that I release it. So
yeah,
that would be helpful.
What do you think we should do, Sandra? Maybe make it good for a week from today? Would that give it
I would say,
time?
How about we say 24 hours from when they listen to the episode?
Yeah.
That would work.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that would work. Because then we don't put any time restraints. Okay. And I think for the listener, just mention that in the email, the request, that you're a listener, and that's how you found out about Ellie. But now for the rest of my day today, is there just one thing that you can, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but just maybe
it's okay.
Something that I can take personally and use to have a better day today?
Sure. Give me a moment to link up and see what I get for you.
It doesn't have to be me. It could be as a whole, just
I would say tap on your high heart about 20 times and just still your mind and visualize the infinity symbol coming toward you. And then sit in that place of balance for 2 to 5 minutes. Give thanks for all the good in your life and all the good that is coming to you, even if you're not sure what that is. And it is going to help reset your whole outlook for the rest of the day.
That is fantastic. And where's my high heart?
It's the breastplate plate between the breasts. And it doesn't have to be, exact. It just has to be, say, let's see, below your collarbone. If you go about 1 to 2 inches below your collarbone, you have it right in the center. Just tap on that, close your eyes, give thanks, ask if there's anything that you need to hear, because we all have our guides around us, and then move forward from there. You'll be a lot more balanced, a lot more centered, and you'll feel really in sync with your flow.
Thank you for that. That's something we can all use. And what's coming to mind now is what a good practice that would be in the morning when we wake up before our day begins.
It really is.
Thank you for that gift. I'm sorry I put you on the spot, but I thought I really wanted to ask. So, yeah.
Sandra, really, I that's,
that's what you do.
I love it. So
all
I'm
right.
glad that you did ask.
Yeah. Well, Ellie, thank you for being our guest.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, you're welcome. It was enjoyable, and I hope it was helpful.
Always.
I appreciate you, and I appreciate the service that you're doing, Sandra.
Yeah, there's always something to learn, and I think sometimes, not sometimes, I offer conversations with so many different people on so many different topics, and some I know resonate more than others with certain people. And I know right now I'm in the phase of being really fascinated by healing. I think that's great. And, so this might be a great resource for people. And I recommend for our listener, if you go to phoenixrisinghealing.com or go to YouTube and type in Ellie Pechet and find out more if this is something that calls to you. And without a doubt, you should come visit Ellie and I at the Afterlife Symposium in September, if you can, and go to afterlifesymposium.org to find out more. Also, I do totally understand that you might live in a part of the world or your schedule is such that you can't come visit us, and I understand, but as someone who is looking for evidence of the afterlife and tools to be in touch with your loved ones, and grief relief and so many more things. There are 33 people now speaking at the symposium, and some of them you will be shocked to see what they're doing and what's happening in the world. Our guest presenter is Sonia Rinaldi, who I had on the show once before, and to learn what she is doing with cameras, video, electronics to capture voice, videos, pictures of our loved ones. I mean, you just can't even believe some of the things that are going on. So I recommend you go to the website anyways and check out what's happening in the world, because once you start realizing that communication is possible with your loved ones, they are in a safe space, they do love you, you will see them again, I believe you live a whole different kind of life. So in closing, my name is Sandra Champlain, and I have been your host on We Don't Die Radio. Our home base for this show is WeDon'tDieRadio.com, where you'll find well over 200 episodes on all things afterlife and living life. I do believe that life is an education for the soul, and that your life here on earth is important. So I want to thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.